Good morning, everybody. Delighted to be here. My name is Mark Sparshott. I'm one of the directors with Proofpoint. We're a leading security as a services company. We focus on email threat prevention, compliance, including DLP, archiving, governance, and secure communications. And I have 15 minutes, not 20 minutes, as my team told me originally, to talk you through a couple of objectives. So I want to focus on really two things: to talk to you about the evolution of targeted email attacks, focusing on a new type of attack which we've noticed over the last couple of quarters, and then to get through as many of my top 5 tips to tighten up email security as I can before I get red carded by John. A lot of companies that we speak to still get hung up on looking at email security from a volume perspective. So they tend to focus on anti-spam solutions and the problem of spam, because spam still makes up about 70% of the email that's sent around the world today. But if you look down through the different volumes, you soon end up at the spearfishing at the bottom, which is just really a rounding error when you look at email in terms of volume. If you look at the types of consumer or bulk phishing that at the moment roughly make up about 0.2% of email, then you look at the consumer brands that are being phished. Now, the thing about these types of phishing attacks, the ones that are targeting you as a consumer, is that they look very spam-like. They're being sent in high volumes from the same botnets that send even greater volumes of spam. They're very impersonal. They're tending to phish well-known brands. And I hope that most of the people in this room would be pretty good at spotting maybe half of these as fake when they come through. So in terms of risk to organizations, spam and bulk phishing are relatively low risk to the organization themselves. If a phishing email, a bulk phishing or consumer-oriented phishing email is sent to your users and makes it through your anti-spam solution, it's not really a risk to you. It's more so a risk to the individual that is being targeted, because they're trying to get hold of their credentials and steal their personal money typically. However, I'd imagine that most of you in the room, because you're here, tend to think about email security in terms of risk. And when you take a look at it in terms of risk, you get a different picture. The pyramid flips pretty much on its head. And suddenly, your focus isn't the 99% of spam that your anti-spam solution is blocking for you. Your focus switches to the one that gets in. And that tends to be, at the moment, these spear phishing attacks. There's a plethora of research from companies like IBM, X-Force, F-Secure, General Dynamics, who happen to be partners of ours, but equally our peers in the industries like Trend Micro, who are also here today, WebSense, Symantec, also here today. All of those reports do a detailed analysis of the data breaches, and thousands of them in aggregate, that occurred over 2010 and 2011. And I'd imagine there'll be some new reports out in and around InfoSec this year looking at what happened in 2012. I've read all of them, and none of them list spam as being a cause of a data breach or targeted attack. All of them talk about the percentage of spear phishing being anywhere from 50% to, even in one latest report, around 90% of targeted attacks, so being the starting point or entry vector of choice for those targeted attacks. We've seen a lot of high-profile data breaches, some that have been reported immediately, others that have only been recently reported, like Coca-Cola, even though they occurred a couple of years ago. We heard earlier on how there's the impending requirement for organizations to announce data breaches, at least to the local authorities in Europe, within 24 hours of noticing the breach, and then to the affected stakeholders or customers, etc., within a reasonable period of time that will be coming down the line. Everybody here is really familiar with the drivers for cyber crime, cyber warfare, cyber espionage. So we're seeing spear phishing really two types: state-sponsored, focusing on cyber warfare, cyber espionage, and then also corporate-sponsored, focusing on espionage and crime. And our colleagues at IBM have a great report in their X-Force blog that talks about these motivations and how they've evolved and which ones are coming to prominence. But actually, if you think about it, spear phishing is effectively social engineering. And Bruce Schneier 10 years ago said professionals hack people, only the amateurs hack machines. he actually reiterated that in his blog earlier this year when he was talking specifically about how sophisticated phishing and email attacks have now become. So if you take a look at one example where social engineering was used, as we go through the evolution of spearfishing now, famous example, often used, RSA. The social engineering aspect here was the fact that although the phishing emails were successfully captured by the anti-spam solution, but albeit because they looked quite spammy to that solution, they were placed in the spam quarantine. Social engineering was used simply to phone the people that had been sent the email and persuade a couple of them to release it and open the attachment, and we all know the consequences of that for RSA. But we're starting to see a real increase in the number of emails that use social engineering up front, and that's being fueled by the use of social networks. So pretty much everybody in this room, I would imagine, will be a member of one or more social networks. I'd guess that you're predominantly all on LinkedIn. I'd be able to find you on LinkedIn, find out what you do for your particular organizations, understand who your peers are, because LinkedIn will present all of that information to me, understand who you're connected to, profile you from a professional capacity, but equally do the same perhaps on Facebook and other social networks. And it's really this social information that's out there that we're all using that means it's possible for the attacks now to include the social engineering right up front in the email itself. So understanding what's personally relevant for me, crafting an email, targeting just me with a personally relevant message relating to my interest groups, coming from either a trusted contact or appearing to come from a trusted contact, either from a work or a social context. So highly personalized, sent in extremely low volumes, and critically as well, last year saw the crossover point when URLs within a spearfish were more prominent than physical malicious attachments. So typically the URLs are not malicious now at the time that they're being sent. They delay the activation of the malware because they know that some systems will be checking the link and link reputation and link contents at the time it's sent using their gateway solutions. So if you look at the risk again, spearfishing is where the risk lies because it's not really being covered in its targeted side from an anti-spam solution. By its very nature, it doesn't look spammy, and the anti-spam solutions are typically still focused on capturing the 99% of spam that they give you an SLA for. They're not really focused on the one that is likely to get through. And it's a tough game. It's really difficult to identify these and requires new approaches. It's very difficult to evolve an anti-spam solution that's really used to doing things on a bulk perspective and get it to think in a different way and look at email from a very low stream of emails and how you identify those as being sophisticated targeted attacks. So now we come to a piece of research that Proofpoint have performed where we've seen over the last couple of quarters several dozen attacks of a new type which we've dubbed longlining because of some of the characteristics. So this is what a longline phishing attack email looks like, latest evolution. Now you're looking at that and you're probably thinking, well, hang on, Mark, that really doesn't look like an evolution. You've just been talking about how the content's been getting more sophisticated and personalized, and now you've got something that looks like it would have been sent a couple of years ago. Well, the evolution in longline attacks isn't really around the content, although it is personalized, as you can see if it wasn't redacted. The evolution really is in terms of who it's targeting, how it's executed, and then the success rates that it enjoys. It's targeting individuals within a business, in this case leveraging their personal capacity, but targeting them because they are in a specific business. And some of the execution leverages techniques that marketing departments have used for many years to try and increase the deliverability of their email and increase their click-through rates. So techniques such as recipient list management and then rotation of content, sender, IPs, subject lines. They're also doing response rate testing as well. So in the graphs, when we see these attacks, you see little spikes occurring as time goes by, and these are little tests that they're doing, test runs to see what their success rates are, and then they refine, and then they test. And then suddenly there's a huge spike of traffic as they deliver the bulk of these emails, which they've now tested and know to be delivering the rates that they're looking for. So in this particular instance, it was targeting 80 of our customers. It's about 135,000 emails sent, but they used 28,000 different IP addresses and 35,000 different sending email addresses. There were 20 compromised websites that, at the time that the emails were originally sent, were not malicious. And it actually works out to be about 0.06% of the customer's traffic, their valid traffic. So largely undetectable, especially when you consider that for any individual company, there were no more than 3 emails that had the same IP source, the same sender source, and the same subject line and content. So practically undetectable for almost every anti-spam solution, including Proofpoint's own anti-spam solution. So where we put this in terms of risk and volume, well, it's achieving some of the volume of bulk phishing, and it's achieving some of the sophistication of a targeted attack. Now, if you're sitting here today and your main fear and risk revolves around cyber warfare and state-sponsored cyber espionage, then this really isn't an attack that you're likely to see, because you will still see and be hit with the very sophisticated, personalized, human-driven, one-at-a-time targeted email attacks. However, if you're type of organization that maybe fears cybercrime in general more, or maybe corporate-sponsored cyber espionage, then this is a type of attack that we think that you're going to see more and more of, because it's proven very successful. And when we talk in terms of success, we talk about high delivery rates that are much higher than bulk phishing, not to the same extent of targeted email attacks, which predominantly all get through. But then you're also seeing, once they're through, click rates, so people going to the website, of up to 10%. And on that particular attack, I think it was something like 9%. Mobility is making matters worse, and I've just been red carded. I was hoping to avoid that. Mobility is making matters worse, not only for consumers as well as for business because of the small screen real estate, but also for business because everybody is doing more and more work on their mobile devices, be it their tablets, their phones, or indeed their laptops as they're out and about. So there's more traffic occurring off network. And in fact, we saw that 19% of all of the clicks in the last quarter on these malicious links that made it through were coming from devices that were off the corporate network. So my top tips, which I promised to do in 2 minutes, if I can have more 2 minutes. 2 minutes more? Is that okay, John? Yeah, great. Okay. So spring clean your current anti-spam solution. Make sure that you've got separate quarantines for spam and for phishing. Don't want to fall foul of the same approach that that RSA had and be hacked by a simple social engineering phone call. There'll be a white paper out on this soon from us, thinking it's time to blacklist, whitelist. If you think about who are targeted with these targeted attacks, it tends to be your most important people in the organizations. And every time I go into a company and start to review their existing anti-spam solution with a look to migrating to ours, the VIPs in that organization always have a huge long list of whitelisted addresses, which are their trusted contacts, predominantly from a work capacity, but also from a personal capacity, that they always want to receive email from. Guess what? When the hackers are sending targeted email attacks to you and to these people, who are they using or pretending these are from? It's from those same trusted contacts. So you're removing any chance that your anti-spam solution did have to capture it by whitelisting these. So at least for your VIPs, make sure that you just move away from using whitelisting. Number 2, Spearfishing education program. You can have a lot of fun and great results with this. Everybody spends a lot of money on physical penetration testing, as well as traditional network-based pen testing. Take some of that budget, put it on a human pen test, or get your pen testing company to focus one of your tests on social engineering. Time that in conjunction with some education training that you're doing. There's a couple of options here that you can use for doing it yourself, or some other sources that you can use if you have some budget to go to this, and prioritize your VIPs. Once they've been educated, do that pen test, cover off some of the people that have been trained, some that haven't been trained, so you've got a control group to see how successful your training was. And then if you're also thinking about looking at additional solutions and security layers, make sure you put those in whilst you do the test as well, so you can test their effectiveness before you buy them. Review your technology layers. All of these technology layers are doing very important jobs for you in their areas, but you need to understand primarily that an anti-spam solution isn't going to protect you against targeted email attacks, and that each of these layers individually are not going to protect you either. So you need to understand the weaknesses in terms of specifically targeted email attacks with these layers, and then if you feel you're at risk, then consider deploying targeted attack solutions that prevent these attacks, but also that provide forensics as well, because no solution is going to catch every targeted attack. So it's equally important to have a solution that once it knows that a website's gone bad, can actually tell you every email that's been sent in your organization that had a link to that, who specifically has clicked on it, so that you can then go and remediate those particular users. And perform a risk assessment, use the resources on the board and others, and use the results of your human pen test and then the trials of the software that you did to gain budget to close those risks if you see them. And I'm sorry I overran.
No, that's fine.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed.